Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Carly Smith with CENTEGIX, and you are on today for the School Safety Trends and Legislation webinar brought to you by CENTEGIX. I'm going to give you some time to log in and get settled, make sure you can hear us okay, see the screen all right. If you have any questions, feel free to send them in through the question box. We'll be monitoring that throughout. If we don't get to your question during the webinar today, no worries. We'll be sure to follow up with you with an email. We're also going to have some polls throughout the webinar today. We want to keep this interactive. So please answer the polls. We'll share the results of those throughout the presentation today. And with that, I'm going to launch our first poll just to make sure everything's working properly. Here we go. Very important poll. If you had 7 more days of spring break, what would you do? Unfortunately, you can only pick one. I know some of you might want to pick more than one. Sleep, drink more margaritas, go to the beach, send your kids to their grandparents, or finish your to-do list. If you can go ahead and answer that poll for me, and then I will be sure to share the results. All right, see some very quick answers here. It sounds like some of you may have been planning summer plans already. I'm going to give you a few more seconds, then I'm going to close out the poll. All right, I see good participation. I certainly appreciate it. Let's go ahead and share out the results. It looks like go to the beach and finish your to-do list are neck and neck. All right, so it looks like we have the actual poll feature figured out here. Again, the question box is on the right-hand side of your panel. Send questions in as we go. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Heather Connolly for introductions.
All right, thank you, Carly, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm a regional vice president as well at CENTEGIX. I live in the Austin area, and I'm honored to introduce our panelists today. First off, we've got Captain Bob, who is from the Argyle ISD Police Department. Bob is captain, as it says on his name and his photo. And some interesting facts about Captain Bob: he moved to the United States as a senior in high school, and prior to that, he lived in Puerto Cabello. Did I pronounce that right? Venezuela. Okay, so that sounds like a really great place for spring break, Captain Bob.
It was.
I wish
awesome.
I could have gone there. Was it awesome to live there? That's great.
Yeah,
and then
was.
The other fun fact, that's great. His wife is a descendant of Governor William Bradford from the Mayflower. Very good history there. We've also got JT Patton on the line, and he is from Friendswood ISD. Hi, JT. Currently, he's the Executive Director of Safety and Operations with Friendswood. Previously, he was a teacher, assistant principal, and principal. Bless you, JT. He has definitely worked his way through the system, and we thank you for serving the system, for your service in the system. We're excited to have JT on today. Our final panelist, unfortunately, had an issue arise at the district she is in, Volusia County Schools, Chief Michelle Newman. So she is not able to join us today. And as we all know, if you're all from districts on the line, we know that things come up that you have to attend to sometimes that throw your schedule off. So unfortunately, Chief Newman, that's what happened today. Chief has given us some words of wisdom. We're going to share later, though, in the webinar with you because we really wanted her input on Alyssa's Law, which is one of our topics today, from the Florida state perspective. So we will hear from her in spirit today later on. And of course, you've heard from Carly and I already. We're the moderators for today, and we're excited to get started. So Carly, I'll have you talk a little bit about our agenda.
All right, thanks, Heather. So we've all seen teacher and staff shortages across Texas and really the nation. We're going to touch on how that could possibly impact school safety as a whole. We're also going to review some school safety trends that we're seeing and also discuss anticipating Alyssa's Law potentially being passed in the state of Texas. Throughout the webinar, as I stated before, we're going to have questions and polls, so please be sure to interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started.
All right. So first off, we want to talk about what we're all reading in the news and feeling. Those of us who come from the school systems, Carly and I were both teachers formerly as well. And unfortunately, both in Texas and nationally, we know that teachers and staff are thinking about leaving the system. Even Governor Greg Abbott has created a task force to examine the teacher shortage specific to us in Texas. But what we want to focus today, of course, is what we think the impact is going to be or is on school safety overall with teacher and staff shortages. So this is where we're going to turn to y'all on the panel, Captain Bob and JT. We want to ask you, first of all, you're seeing some of this? If you are, and how do you believe, if you aren't yet, how do you believe it's going to impact school safety across your district? So Captain Bob, I'm going to start with you today.
So we've, like many of the schools, we've seen kids coming back from being quarantined or kept at home, and a lot of the behavior issues caught us off guard. I think they caught some other school districts off guard, but there's significantly higher quantity of behavior issues. For us, it's primarily our middle school kids. They're in that transition from, elementary, where you kind of do what you're told, and high school, where you're fairly independent, and the middle school kids are developing their young adult coping mechanisms, and they just were not developed very well at home. And so we're having a lot of middle school behavior issues.
Thanks, Captain Bob. JT, how about you?
Yeah, I would say it might be a little too early to see, what the impact of teacher shortages will do to impact education. I would agree with Captain Bob in terms of students who have been at home and adjusting coming back from COVID with everything that comes with that, the scheduling, the cell phone, all types of different adjustments to a schedule is definitely something that all school districts are facing. And so I think the question for administrators in terms of safety is, what is the school district thinking about doing to meet the needs of what's going on nationally throughout the state to make your school safe? So I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, no, great feedback. Thank you both for that. These are some surveys and studies that were done here in Texas, one of which was from the American Federation of Teachers of Texas, recently done. 66% of educators have considered leaving this year. That is a frightening statistic. The Raise Your Hand Texas did a study as well, and they found that 50% of teachers do leave after their first year. That is also frightening. Why do they want to leave? And that's sort of what we want to try to connect the dots on today. We know pay is always an issue for teachers. Teachers do not get paid enough. Workload, we keep throwing more things at them. Testing is always an issue. We want to focus, of course, on why 8% want to leave due to safety concerns. And so that's where we want to ask the panelists another question. We want to kind of look at what are the types of safety incidences that your teachers and staff are facing right now? What are the things you're seeing in your own districts? Are they fights? Are they behavior issues like you mentioned, Captain Bob, in middle school, especially things that we weren't ready for? Mental health, medical. What are the things that you face in your districts right now that are safety incidences that you're dealing with? And let's start, JT, with you on this one.
Yeah, I would say that one of the challenges for all students, and you could focus maybe more on secondary if you wanted to, is making sure that you're understanding the whole child and providing supports to that through social and emotional learning. And so beyond just the discipline, what does support look like for students who are struggling for a variety of reasons at school? So what's come out of that is safe and secure teams. And so I think being able to address the whole child as they're struggling behaviorally beyond just assigning discipline is a challenge for schools in order to improve behavior for students.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're seeing more of those behavior incidents overall than JT.
Yeah, I would say, I'd probably say that that's true. And being able to manage probably isn't the right word, but being able to support those students as they're moving through those situations, I think is the challenge for school districts.
Okay, great. Captain Bob, how about you?
So teaching is a very nurturing profession. And it's my opinion that most teachers get into the job to teach. and they want to nurture and help the child grow up, they're coming into the profession unprepared for the level of discipline that they're being asked to manage in a classroom. And the problems, the behavior problems are escalating. Teachers weren't prepared for it. Their schooling does not prepare them for it. So it's up to the school districts to get them up to speed quickly. And we use a variety of tools, but it has caught a lot of the teachers off guard, and they're like, this is not what I envisioned teaching to be. And that's a struggle. That's when you talk about retention, for us, it's the teachers are leaving because they are unprepared for the level of discipline that they're being asked to provide and the level of support. They get good support from administration, but administration is struggling to catch up with the disciplinary needs.
Okay, great. Thanks, Captain Bob. We're going to go now to our first poll, and we're going to find out on with the attendees what's going on in your districts as well. So Carly, go ahead with your first poll. There it goes.
Perfect. So what type of incidences do you frequently see in your district? Medical, fights, runners, or violent incidents? And feel free to chat us in through the question feature if you don't see something you'd like to share within this poll response. Give you a few more seconds here to respond. Lots of reaction here from our audience. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in about 3 more seconds. Okay, and I'm going to share out the results. So fights win by a landslide with 80%, followed closely by medical. All right, so now we're going to take a look at our fall 2021 white paper that looks at crisis alert data from districts across the nation, and then break down what type of incidences we've seen and the impact on our schools.
So this is very similar to what we just found from our attendees. We actually took data from our crisis alert solution from fall of 2020 to fall of 2021. And the area that I want to focus on, because it was definitely what the attendees and everybody on this call has been experiencing as well, and that is the behavior and or physical altercation. So look at the yellow pie pieces in our charts. And we found from one fall to the next, we had a 250% increase in student behavior incidences with physical altercations. That's incredible. We think that's really compelling data. And this is, remember, the data just from our system, not from everybody else's, but it sure sounds like that's what everybody else is experiencing. We broke it down a little bit further with that 74% breakdown. We saw that 46% of that 74% is physical altercations. That's going to be fights. That could be kids throwing chairs at you. I had that happen to me when I was a teacher. I had a chair thrown at me once or twice. Behavior, 23%. So that's just dealing with, like you've been talking about, both JT and Captain Bob. We're trying to work with social emotional issues with kids all over the place, and COVID did not help matters. And then 5%, we call them elopement or our runners that are running off campus. Again, this is only our data. So imagine what data coming from everybody else's sources and solutions might show us. Interesting stuff. All right, Carly, we're gonna have another poll. So we're gonna go into the next one. So get ready again, attendees.
All right, so knowing that there's been a drastic increase in safety incidences across the board in K-12, we like to know what type of solutions are you currently utilizing in your district. So a mobile app, a two-way radio, a wall button, a classroom phone, or other, and feel free to put that in the question box to us and chat it in through that question box. Give you a few more seconds here. All right, gonna go ahead and close it out. Great participation in the polls and sharing the results. So a two-way radio is 79%, followed by the classroom phone. And then it looks like mobile app and wall button are very, very similar as well. So we talked about behavior incidences quite a lot. But did you know that medical incidences are the second largest type of safety incidences we've seen, not only in our data, but other data according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. So what do these percentages mean? They're very impactful and kind of shocking as we read through the data. 68% of school nurses managed a life-threatening emergency at their district. So shout out to the nurses out there. 10 to 25% of injuries to children occur while in school. As a mother, that makes my heart race a little bit and my blood pressure go up. And then according to an Ed Week article, there is a mental health crisis, particularly around children related to mental health visits to the emergency rooms. They are seeing a 24% increase for children visits ages 5 to 11 and a 31% increases for children's age 12 to 17. So these numbers are staggering. So Captain Bob, I'm going to pivot over to you for a moment. How do you handle medical incidences in your districts, and do you have any stories to share on how you handle those emergencies as they arise?
I put my hands above my head and I scream down the hallway, help! So interesting you bring up the medical one. We had a couple of kids, 3 of them caught for vaping, so they asked me to go in and counsel them, right? And so I grab a conference room, I'm in counseling kids, I think I'm doing an awesome job, right? Hey, I'm Captain Bob, I'm doing a great job. Having the strict, stern conversation, but getting the students to participate, getting them to talk. Because generally a kid, they know what they did wrong, you just gotta get them to admit to themselves, right? I look down the end of the table and this one kid is, forget the symptoms, he goes into a grand mal seizure. Because apparently I'm being a lot stricter than I thought I was being. So how do you get help in a conference room, in a school you're visiting, you're not really sure where you are? I grab the button and I start mashing away on my staff alert button and I get flooded with help. I mean, for me, it was great. The nurse knew where I was, a little map pops up, they knew exactly where to go. For medical incidents, we are no longer using the classroom phone. We're no longer using our wall-mounted buttons. The teachers have the badge on them, and all they do is push the button 3 times and they get help right away. That is the evolution we experienced in a short period of time, and the teachers like it. They don't have to look for a button, they don't have to run to a phone, they just pick up their badge and start pushing it. The nurses love it because they get a visual. They kind of know, oh, if I'm going to that classroom, it's probably this diabetic student or it's that epileptic student, right? They have a vague idea of where they're headed, of the student, just by association and them getting to know their building. They are doing a good job of anticipating what they're running to.
Yeah, I appreciate that story. I mean, it sounds like you're very hyper-focused on response time, which we know what a huge difference that can make as well. And you bring up a good point. JT, I know you mentioned earlier about, prior to this webinar, about some concerns around special education and students with higher needs. Is there anything you'd like to add as far as medical incidences and how they're handled in your district as well?
Yeah, similar to what Captain Bob was talking about. When you have a severe, the people that are listening to this probably experience this as I do, and Captain Bob, when you have a severe seizure or a medical situation where it's coming down to seconds, not so much minutes, being able to have that GPS locator on that button as you're pushing that, in terms of what that means for the nurse who's also providing that care, you're saving time. Because you look at that poll in my district, we've had all of those and currently have 4 of those in place. And that allows the person who has to provide that care, whatever that is, and in this situation, we're talking something that could be life-threatening, being able to communicate that you need assistance, who you are, and being able to have a GPS location is huge. And also too, it allows for other people who have the app on their phone to then apply a standard response protocol in conjunction with that. So if we're talking about a seizure, which is what I'm sort of talking about and what Captain Bob did, you can now put your campus in hold through the use of an app on your phone, which we're talking about things that are occurring within seconds. as opposed to who's making the announcement, and all the things that happen. For those of us that experience those types of situations, the immediacy of it is super helpful.
Thank you for sharing that, JT. All great points. So that leads us to the crisis alert data, focusing on medical incidences. So we know we saw a 250% increase in behavior incidences across the board, but we also saw a 130% increase in medical instances. And I want to point out, this is from spring 2021 to fall 2021, so it's not going to be the full year, and still a drastic increase. And also, I know Heather pointed out earlier on our previous data, this is just crisis alert by CENTEGIX data alone. So if you have any other solutions layered in there, then it's probably even more than this, which I think is a really important call out. So with that, we're going to take us back to our discussion at the top of the hour on teachers and staff wanting to leave. And now we're going to share some data from the American Psychological Association.
So we thought that this was pretty profound information as well. The American Psychological Association Task Force looked at physical attacks on school staff during COVID, and they actually increased. We saw 14% of teachers saying there was an increase, 18% of school psychologists or social workers in the schools, 22% of staff, so this is your custodians, your front office workers, you name it, and 15% administrators said they saw an increase. So when you look back at the statistics, we know 66%, again, according to that American Federation of Teachers survey done in Texas, teachers want to leave. 50% nationally is about the average. And through the study, through this physical attacks on school staff, you know, the reason that they're saying they want to leave the profession because of this is because of that school climate and school security, those issues they're facing with both climate and security. So I'm going to pass it back to the panelists again, and we want to hear, JT and Captain Bob, have you seen an increase in staff requesting help in the last year or so? And if you can give us any of those experiences. And JT, I'll start with you first.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if we've seen an increase in it, but to go to the point that you said before that, where teachers need, because of the overall rise just nationally or statewide, they're definitely aware of what's going on in trends. And I go back to having something on them, on their person, to be able to put the campus in lockdown or to communicate assistance for someone to be there, is something that our staff has told us has made them feel more safe. And it provides other layers of safety that we talked about a little bit, Captain Bob and I did, but providing that device or card for them to do that is something that we are doing in order to make our staff feel more safe.
Yeah, JT, I have a quick question too to add into that. For between elementary, middle school, and high school, where are you seeing the most requests for help? I'm just curious by grade level.
So oddly enough, we've seen it more at our middle school level. And so I don't know if that's oddly enough. Sometimes your physical altercation situations typically happen more at the secondary level. And our middle school goes down into the lower levels too. So it's not we have a traditional junior high. So we've seen it more at that level. And that's for a variety of reasons: elopement, or an altercation on a smaller level, could be a student with a medical situation. And it could be like what Captain Bob was saying, that those middle school students maybe are the ones that have struggled the most coming back from COVID or not. I don't know if that's true, but that's just what our data shows.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
So we're seeing the elementary school teachers are very comfortable calling for help. They're using the button on the crisis alert system and the badges more frequently as they gain confidence and comfort with the fact that they push the button and they get help. The middle school campus, and for us that's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they are gaining confidence as they see our elementary teachers successfully using the system, Now they have confidence and they're starting to use it more and more. Our crisis alert system is part of our layered security methodology. We start with CEPTED, designing the environment for safety, like there's no bushes up against the building, that kind of thing. And it works, hold on a second. I'll be out there in a minute. Yeah, they knocked on the door.
Quits, right, Captain Bob?
Right, yeah. Everybody wears ID badges. We have a camera system with facial recognition. We have the crisis alert system at that point. We have radios, environmental controls. We can do lockdowns from a single point and secure a building. We have a lot of staff that are equipped to handle a deadly threat in the building. And then we practice our responses. And I want to jump to the calling for help and the practice. Everybody talks about, well, this is what I would do for reunification. We're going to follow standard response protocols. Because we're using the crisis alert system, the teachers are practicing their standard response, they're practicing their traditional response, they're practicing getting help from the nurse on a regular basis. So while we're fortunate we haven't had a deadly threat on campus, the teachers are gaining confidence that they would know what to do because we're practicing the small events at the same time. That's a long-winded answer to get around the fact that our elementary school teachers are very comfortable using the system and they enjoy it because they get help immediately.
That's great.
Was that too long-winded?
No, that
Love
was
it. It's
And
great.
Jake, didn't you mention before there was a training of some sort or some sort of alert during cafeteria time that you were going to share?
Yeah, we have used the system for the standard response protocol for all of our drills. So we go ahead and use it. And obviously for the lockdown, we notify our police department because they get instant communication so that they're aware of what's going on. But with any safety standard response protocol or system that you have in place, you're going to have situations that come up. For example, a student pulls a fire alarm and it's not a fire. And so we had an accidental situation with this that was during a lunch period for a lockdown, which upon reflection was a good experience because as anyone listening to this knows, practicing a lockdown drill during lunch is always a challenge. And so, or it's something that's avoided. So having that occur and going through and reflecting on what transpired, looking at your plans and what happened, it didn't happen, was really good. And so just to speak a little bit about the system, it has strobes that activate that are color coded to the standard response protocol. It has a PA takeover. It has communication that comes across computer screens. It has app notifications for first responders, and first responders are people like assistant principals, nurses, SROs, etc. So all of that was activated, but it wasn't something that was on the calendar for that day. So having that happen and react to that was a great learning experience for us.
That's great. A beautiful mistake, right? But yet it trained and it really helped all of your staff and students respond to it. Because I know how students get a little bit apathetic when it's time for drills, right? We know what we're supposed to do, but they don't. I bet that was a really good learning experience for all involved. Thanks for sharing that, JT.
In
Alignment.
I was just going to say the strobes come in handy because in the cafeteria during lunchtime, I can't even hear the person next to me talking because it's so loud in those cafeterias. So that was a happy accident. It sounds like some good learning came out of it. So thanks again for sharing.
Great story. So in line with what you've all been saying, we saw again with our crisis alert data also an increase in staff requesting help from fall to fall. And so they're needing our help more and more in schools. So we need to do that. We need to provide whatever safety mechanisms we can to our staff and teachers. Again, doesn't include the data from all solutions, just from ours. Okay, attendees, I hope you're still awake out there. We want to do another poll. So here it is.
All right, we talked about what type of safety incidences you're experiencing in your district. We talked about what type of safety solutions you use in your district. Now we want to know the why behind what safety solutions you use in your district. So why did you select this? We know we're seeing an increase in safety incidences across the board in K-12. Was it the ease of use? Was it the cost? Was it stakeholder input, legislation, or other? Feel free to send that in via the question box. We'd love to hear from you. And it may be a combination of these things. You can pick more than one on this one because we know a lot of times there's a layered response. Great participation. Going to give you guys a few more seconds. I'm going to close it out. All right. Thank you so much for your participation. So it looks like cost is a huge factor in which solution you choose, followed closely by legislation and ease of use. They're neck and neck at 17%. Love that we're including stakeholders in those decisions. We're going to highlight a little bit of Chief Newman's feedback on including stakeholders a little later on today. And then we have some others that chatted in as well.
Were there any chat-ins in the question on the other and what that meant?
No, it looks
Carly?
like had issues selecting more than one.
Okay.
Apologies for that. But it looks like some people also use radios along with the selections that they picked.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, great. That's great. That was a good poll. Good to know.
So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Bob. Why did you choose the safety solutions that you chose in your district? What was the why behind what you chose in your district as far as safety solutions go?
We've had a couple of unfortunate serious events that put together trying to be tactful about the serious events we've had. There've been some critical events, and it became apparent to us that our existing process of the wall buttons, the telephones, initiating communication to staff that there's a serious problem, that was our problem. It was communications. And if anybody's ever done a emergency drill, you quickly realize that communications is going to be your problem. So Chief Kearney came across Crisis Alert. It looked like an effective way to communicate very rapidly that there was a problem and where it was. Once everybody's in tune with, hey, I better go get my radio or I better listen to the PA, then you can continue on with your emergency response. And it was that initial communication, and Crisis Alert fit the bill in many respects better than we anticipated. But you know, we've had to evacuate schools, we've had to respond to kids doing something horrible, we've had some other really serious events where communications was the problem. And that's why we went to Crisis Alert. Cost wasn't our issue. It was ease of use and timeliness that caused us to go in that direction.
Yeah, ease of use is huge as a teacher or as a former teacher. They say once a teacher, always a teacher. I have my background's in special education, and you're juggling so many different things, but to be able to discreetly and quickly ask for help when you need it can make a huge impact. JT, how about you? What was the why behind your safety solution selection?
So for our district, and mainly our school safety advisory committee, we were looking at how can we provide, like Chief Bob said, you know, immediate communication to staff, immediate notification to everyone, and being able to do it at any place within the building where you don't have to get on a phone. And so when you look at those things, this system allows you to do that. So anyone, you know, what you will say in education is anyone can call a lockdown at any time. But what does that really mean? And how long does that take? And what does that look like? And so the ease of use, being able to activate that anywhere on campus and have a PA take over a color-coded strobe, which turns red in this situation with a lockdown, taking over machines, it takes care of so many things. Immediate notification to the police department, you know, GPS location for a description of where someone is. Those things that it allows puts you there within seconds. And so, like Captain Bob was saying, in terms of, having to get on your radio and do other different things, we have different people that do different things during a lockdown. Everyone locks down, but we may have someone looking at cameras where they're locked down, et cetera. But that immediate blanket to everyone of what's going on instantly is really something we were looking to do.
Thank you for sharing that. And very similar threads. It sounds like communication and just kind of automation of that response seems to be very high up on your list on why you made the selection that you did. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And that leads us to the last topic of today's webinar, which is legislation.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Alyssa's Law. Not everybody understands what this is about just yet in Texas, but we are anticipating the potential passing of it. Let me just give you a little background on it, first of all. So in Florida at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting in Parkland, Alyssa was one of the students that unfortunately lost her life in the shooting. Her mom, Lori, decided to do something about it. And so she has been an incredible activist for school safety across the nation, not just in Florida, for all of us. Lori actually serves on her school board now, and she has also done some tremendous work by getting Alyssa's Law passed both in Florida and New Jersey so far. You can see on the map in the gray, those are the states that are in progress. So we are one of them. Texas is a very forward-thinking state with school safety, as we all know from Senate Bill 11. We have a lot of legislative mandates, but I personally, as a mom, former teacher, I really appreciate those because I know it's keeping our kids in our schools safer. We have a lot of work we have to do because of Senate Bill 11, but it's also helping our kids stay safe, and our goal is to keep teachers and staff in the schools, as we've been talking about all day. So getting back to the story in Florida, they passed this year before last, and they've been implementing it across the districts in Florida. Essentially what the bill is that there needs to be a panic alert device in all classrooms, and silent panic alerts, because when the Parkland shooting or any shooting happens, we don't want there to be a lot of noise or people needing to talk on the phone to get to 911. That's a really big issue when we have these shootings. So not only is it a panic alert device in the classroom for the teacher or the staff to be able to alert everybody to, but it also has to do with response time. And so both JT and Captain Bob talked about that. It's the response time. It could be a matter of seconds versus minutes. Then we need to get these people help and these kids help. And so we know that, the medical problems that we had with a lot of these, have had with these shootings is we can't get to these kids fast enough to save their lives. So that was a really large part of the bill and the legislation, and why Alyssa's mom, Lori, obviously wanted to have this passed. In 2021, State Representative Sean Thierry, I hope we pronounced her name right, from Houston, did introduce House Bill 204 during our session. Unfortunately, it did not pass. I think we had a little bit of a crazy session here in Texas. But the hope is that the next session in 2023, I think there's a lot of parents, including myself and others, that would like to see something like this in all of our kids' classrooms. I'd sure like, if there is a violent event in my son's classroom, to know that they're going to have help quickly. They're going to be able to find those kids and teachers that need that help as well. So where we hoped Chief Newman could help provide us some insight on this is because she's gone through this process. Her school district, Volusia County, has actually, this impacted them. I had the opportunity working with a lot of Florida districts last year, listen to a lot of them talk about the impact that this law had, positive and negative. It's always something big when we get a mandate handed to us. It's a lot of work on our end in our schools. But a lot of really positive things came out of those conversations that I was able to hear and witness through those school districts. So we did gather some notes from Chief Newman. So Carly's going to tell us a little bit about him. One of the questions we wanted to ask her was how this law did impact her district in particular, and how they dealt with it basically. So Carly, what did Chief Newman provide us as far as her summary of that?
Right. So to summarize, she said, while Alyssa's law made having a panic system a requirement for all school districts, Volusia County was ahead of the game. That's the quote, ahead of the game. We already had a system in place and they were in the process to transitioning to crisis alert prior to Alyssa's law. She went on to say that we believe in providing our faculty and staff with the tools needed to report suspicious activity, medical situations, campus disruptions, and active threats in real time. And I think it's important to point out that 98% of the data that we showed you today from our crisis alert white paper was all on everyday emergencies. So behavior, kids running off campus, and medical issues, that takes up 98% of that data, whereas that small 2% is more of the lockdown situations. So Heather, I don't know if you want to kind of kick it over to JT and Bob about the impact of this.
Yeah, I would love to hear it because it sounds similar. Y'all are both ahead of the game a little bit here. If we do get Alyssa's law, if it does pass this next session for us, it sounds like you're in a similar situation that Chief Newman was with Volusia County. So, you know, just back to you both. If JT, if you want to start, how do you think this law would impact our districts in Texas and yours in particular?
Yeah, I think it's going to impact school districts greatly. They're going to have to be able to go through and read exactly what's necessary and then set forward the immediate communication and exactly what is the panic alert device need to look like. And so for us as a school district, we're excited to already be on that process already, having the system in place, providing teachers, and it's not just teachers, all staff. So it's maintenance staff, it's paraprofessionals that have these that move throughout the district. But depending on what comes out of it, it could impact greatly school districts in terms of what they need to have in place in order to communicate a safety situation at the classroom level.
Yeah. Captain Bob, how about you?
We're fortunate, like JT's district is. I think we're a little bit ahead of the curve because we've had some events. We've already taken steps to become a more safe environment. I'll just throw it out there that way. We have standard response protocols. We have our SHAC committees, and the parents are asking us to move forward with this as well. So that when they did see, you know, the cost, because it's a product and it costs some money, the parents went to the school board and said, yes, you need to do this. So we did it. I think we're ahead of the curve. The teachers talk to their peers in other districts, and our teachers, and we talked earlier about retention, and yeah, we still have that problem, but our teachers are telling their peers in other districts, yeah, we've already done this and it's awesome, it works. Other administrators know when that law passes, they're going to be at a mad scramble to comply. It's one less thing our administrators have to worry about and our school board, because we've already achieved compliance with the anticipated law here in Texas.
That's awesome. Thank you both for that. You know, the other thing we wanted to really dig in with Chief Newman on, and y'all could probably provide the same thing, but we wanted her to provide us with advice that she would give to the attendees here in Texas on what they should anticipate or what they should do to prepare for the potential passing. You both know this already, which is great. So here's some of the feedback. Carly's going to share the feedback that the chief provided for us. And we'd love to hear from y'all too if you agree with it and if it resonates for you. So Carly, what did Chief Newman say?
She mentioned to solicit input from faculty and staff. She said employees were very apprehensive of putting an app on their phone and being tracked on and off campus, which I totally understand that. And she only had a 20% adoption rate of the phone app that they had prior to their transition to the crisis alert solution. After they transitioned to the crisis alert solution, they had 100% adoption rate, which is huge because they have like over 8,000 employees. That's probably why she isn't here today, because she has over 8,000 employees. So that's a whole lot of students. And once they were ensured that the crisis alert solution only works on campus and it doesn't track your movement unless you activate it on campus, they felt relieved and they felt comfortable and confident in using the solution. And that's why you go from a 20% adoption rate to 100% adoption rate. That's a huge difference. She said she really feels strongly about giving them the capability to call for immediate assistance. And the quote was, they loved it. And I think this is the last one is interesting because it speaks to what you mentioned too earlier, JT, about the cafeteria mishap. Don't discipline employees that accidentally activate the alert. Use it as a teachable moment. By approaching it this way, you'll gain the trust of your employees, which I think is huge. Anything that you'd like to add as far as her points, JT, that you think that kind of resonated with you?
Yeah, I think one of the things, like I said before, we looked at our school advisory committee. That what drove out of that was a need for something like this, and then we came upon this and went with this. I think that's true that your staff has to have buy-in. I get that they do like the piece of it's just a card when I'm out that's connected to the school. So when I'm gone, it's not an app. So we heard similar things. One of the things that's good for the administrators that are out there listening is also they know because they've purchased products on a large scale that go in all schools, whether it's keyless entry through card readers or whatever it may be, is having this product installed by Five Stone Safety after hours and being able to communicate with Craig Hawksworth on a regular basis with issues that come up. Speedy response is huge. Any large install across your district, as I said a second ago, the way it's installed and the way they respond to your needs as things come up. Because again, anything that's installed at a macro level, there's always things that come up, always. It's always going to happen. And people that are that do what Captain Bob does and what I do know that. And so I just talked to Craig this morning. So being able to talk to him, and we installed it mostly in August. This is our first year with it. So having that relationship is huge. But teacher trust is big, functionality is big, and it works. And so the being able to, as a teacher, they just want to know, is it going to work? That's their thing. And as people respond to them and situations are able to be handled, that builds trust. And it also helps. We talked about the elementary schools a little bit, or upper elementary is what I would say, using it more frequently, just like with Argyle with Captain Bob. It allows people to become more familiar with the situation that's requiring that alert if it's a regular thing. We talked about a seizure or whatever it may be. So yeah, I kind of jumped around a little bit, but those are the things that are kind of on my mind.
You bring up a good point. Ease of implementation of any safety solution that you're putting in, it matters, and training matters to make sure your staff feel comfortable using it. Those are all great points. How about you, Captain Bob? Which one of those points that Chief Newman made resonated most with you?
Ease of use is the primary one across the board. When I talk to teachers, as JT mentioned, Captain Newman mentioned it, it's ease of use. And I'm going to use that to go into you need to practice it. Nobody reads a book and goes out and wins a state championship in basketball. Nobody reads a book and then wins their state championship as a football. They have practice. They have practice all week long. They review game tape. They look at what worked and what didn't work. I would encourage you, all participants, to practice start to finish. Have a teacher come to the front office and detonate the button. Have the teacher push the button and have them watch what happens in your command center, if that's the front office, if it's at another location. But take the process to its completion. There's initial response, there's calming the chaos, right? Getting control, and then restoring normal educational process, right? Practice is key, and I would say that the unfortunate event, JT had a false alarm. We've had one as well, and they are to be cherished because it demonstrates to administration, the principals, I really need someone in the front office conveying information, being on the radio, letting the incoming police officers who think they're responding to a real shooting, getting them organized, right? the complete response. There was a fire in New York City at one of the public schools. The teachers could smell it, the students could smell it, and the teacher's response to students was, if it's a real fire, the principal will pull the fire alarm. They were that conditioned to the principal's the one that pulls the alarm. You want, the badges are awesome. I think I'm holding it flat so people can't really see it. There's a simple button on the back. You push the button and you call for help. The teachers need to become comfortable doing that. So bring a teacher at random down, have them start all your drills and rotate the teachers. They're like, the feedback I've gotten is, wow, that was easy. It didn't hurt. They were expecting, I don't know, to get shocked or something. But they're comfortable doing it, and it invokes the entire practice start to finish. For tornado drill, we start with our superintendent. She is looking at weather maps with our input. She initiates the tornado I call them lockdowns, the tornado response. And it comes down from the top to the schools. Practice is key. That would be my encouragement and advice.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. And thanks to Chief Newman, who's in spirit. JT, did you want to say something? You're leaning in.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to add one other thing because I'm thinking of the administrators who may be listening. Anytime you install something this large and it's about safety, and both I and Captain Bob talked about lockdowns probably more than anything else. It's aligned with all the standard response protocols, severe weather or whatever. Is having Craig Hawksworth there with me to present it to, let's just call it 200 faculty members. Okay, and having that knowledge along that implementation piece is was very helpful in terms of rollout, because that's the other thing we're talking about with, buy-in or teachers feeling comfortable. Having a person there with you that's aware of what a standard response protocol is, that's aware of what goes on in schools and is familiar with what's going on is the way to start off on the right foot, if you will. They're going to trust the administrators in the district for sure. Your teachers will do that, and people listening know that. But having that sort of rollout to however many thousands of employees there are, or hundreds if it's smaller, is really key. And I just want to concur with Captain Bob about the importance of practicing with it and incorporating, in our case, the city of Friendswood or the police department with the drills that we're doing has been super helpful, because it needs to come down to a student level. If a student understands what it means, that's the best place to be in. And people listening that work in schools know that. If it's just parents or teachers talking about it, that's one thing. But if a student knows what it means and what to do, it just helps drive home, what do I do during a lockdown? What are the things that are important to do? So I just wanted to say a couple things about that.
Thanks, JT. Thanks. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of our time together. Great advice from all of our panelists, even Chief Newman in spirit. Carly is going to take us to the end now, and we're going to ask one more question.
All right, so this question is for our panelists, but also for the audience. So please send it in through the question box. We'd love to hear from you. Captain Bob, we're gonna go ahead and start with you. We just wanna know, do you have any sort of ideas that districts should consider when trying to make their teachers feel safer in their classrooms? Any insight on that as kind of parting thoughts? And we have about 5 minutes left between the two of you. So anything you'd like to share on that?
Put them in a room, ask them questions, and then encourage them to send emails, because some teachers don't want to talk about safety in public. If your teachers are asking you questions about safety, it's in their heart and it's a concern to them. Respond to every single one of their concerns. Even if it's just, and literally I've done this, we never thought about that. And you get that big wide-eyed, oh my goodness, we didn't think about it. Come up with a solution or a response protocol and convey it back to the teacher, right? Get their input. You want their input. They're not feeling safe. You want them to feel safe. And so you do that through some real sound listening skills.
I like that. If you don't ask, then you don't know. So just giving them the opportunity to speak up. And you make a good point. Not everybody's going to speak up in that big district-wide meeting. Like, they need other avenues. Maybe they want to call or text or shoot you an email. I love that you kind of opened it up in that way. JT, we have about 1 more minute before we're going to launch 2 last little polls here. Any ideas you'd like to share or parting thoughts as far as ideas on how districts could make their teachers feel safer?
I concur with everything Captain Bob said. The only thing that is something to think about for administrators, SROs, central administrators, campus administrators is there's probably only a few that have now become administrators now coming out of teaching during COVID. And so we're not in the classroom. And so what's different about that? It might not be extreme safety, but listening to teachers and hearing what their thoughts are of what's going on now when they say it's different. Well, what's different? What's changed? What do you need more from us when it comes to safety? And I concur with everything he said.
Thank you, JT, so much for sharing that. Well, I really want to thank both JT and Captain Bob for joining us today. True thought leaders in the great state of Texas. We're very appreciative of you being part of CENTEGIX panel. And with that, I'm going to leave you with 2 final polls. I know I'm just putting you guys to work out there in audience land. The first one is, would you like to see a copy of our fall safety trends report? Yes, no, maybe, or how about just the Cliff Notes? Because we understand how busy you are. That way you can dig into it at your leisure. And we, of course, can answer any questions you may have on that. Give you a few more seconds to answer, and then we're going to have 1 more poll. I'm going to close that out. And then the last poll is, would you like to learn more about Crisis Alert by CENTEGIX? Yes, no, maybe, or what is Crisis Alert? Because it has come up quite a bit in today's panel. So feel free to select whatever makes the most sense. We'll be happy to reach out to you and provide you with additional information. So again, thank you guys so much for your time today. We sincerely appreciate you. Heather's going to end here by putting our contact information here up on the screen. You, of course, can reach out to us directly if you'd like. I can't believe we're on time. This is amazing. 4 more minutes. Like, this is unheard of in webinar land. Again, we greatly appreciate you, Captain Bob and JT. Thank you guys so much for joining. Heather, thank you so much for being co-host with me today. We certainly appreciate you guys. And we wish you all a wonderful week. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.